Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here, joining you for another edition of Inside Arsenal. I hope you're all well and enjoying your week. We've got a bit of a special for you today. We're going to focus this episode very much on Jurrien Timber, who at the time of recording is not yet confirmed as an Arsenal player, but a fee has been agreed with Ajax. He is heading over to the UK to undergo his medical before being announced as another summer addition for Arsenal. So I'm going to spend today's edition talking to someone very special who certainly knows a lot more about the player than I do, so we'll get some really good insight from him in terms of what sort of player Arsenal are signing, his strengths, his weaknesses, a little bit of insight into that sort of thing. And we'll end by taking a few of your questions as usual. And my guest today, it doesn't really need too much of an introduction. He is obviously a Manchester United legend, but more importantly for this, an absolute legend when it comes to Ajax and Dutch football. Is none other than Jaap Stam, who knows one or two things about defending. Jaap, how are you? Thank you very much for joining me.
Hi, Charles. I'm good. Thank you.
Great to have you here. Now, obviously, I'm sure you've been keeping very much up to date on what's happening in the world of football this summer. Lots of big moves happening as teams across Europe are trying to strengthen their squad ahead of the new season. Arsenal very much at the forefront of that as well. Kai Havertz has come in. Declan Rice is about to join in a club record fee. And Jurrien Timber is on his way from Ajax. Now, I wanted to talk to you about Timber, a player who certainly over here we don't know too much about. There's a lot of excitement about the signing. We're not all absolute experts when it comes to Ajax and Dutch football, and I know you've certainly seen a lot more than him than we have. So I just wanted to start off, first of all, by talking about him as a player. We'll start with his strengths in terms of what sort of player Arsenal are signing. So, how do you view Timber in his, let's face it, it's a pretty short career so far, only 22. What are your views on him as a player and what his strengths are?
Yeah, he's a very good player. Like you're saying, in Holland, he's been doing very well. Last season being very impressive. This season, due to circumstances, not as impressive as last season, but you can still see the quality that he's showing. He's very comfortable on the ball. Right-footed, can create that extra man in midfield by dribbling forward, by carrying that ball forward. Very good in taking his positioning as well, and his passing. Very accurate, good and good technique, and that's the type of play that we all like in Holland. We spoke, I think, in the past about it as well. When you're a Dutch player, when you've been grown in the Dutch academy, then people expect a lot from you, even when you're a defender, in terms of carrying that ball forward to create that extra man, being very decisive in your defending as well, having pace, of course, as well. He's quick. He can play as a centre back, which he's been doing for Ajax. He can play as a right back as well at times going forward. So he's very versatile. He's a very good player that we all like in Holland. So for him, probably making that step to Arsenal is a very positive one. And I think for Arsenal as well, in bringing him in, when I look at Arsenal, you see a team that's very comfortable. All the players are very comfortable on the ball and being very dominant on the ball as well. And then I think he can be very successful in doing so for them.
Yeah, I mean, he's just 22, but I think he made his debut for Ajax 3 years ago now, 2020. So he was a teenager when he came through at Ajax, which isn't unheard of. Obviously, we know they like to give young players a chance. But did he immediately sort of settle into the team? Was he, straight away? Did everyone look at him and think, this is a real talent we've got on our hands here?
Yeah, we all saw in Holland. We saw that he was a real talent. Of course, in Holland, when you go into the first team of Ajax, you need to get adjusted, of course, to that team, to the players, to the league as well. The Dutch league is much different than, of course, the English league, than the Premier League. But over here in Holland, he fitted in straight away. You can see from the start that he's showing his ability. Needed to grow a little bit into it, or to get used to the pace of the opposition. But within a very short amount of time, short period of time, he's been doing so. And then after that, he's been one of the main players for them to make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, he was very successful under Ten Hag. And do you think Ten Hag leaving and going to Manchester United impacted him and the rest of the Ajax team? Basically, obviously, they didn't have the greatest of seasons last season, and Timber's performances fell away a little bit. Do you think Ten Hag going, had a big impact on him?
Well, I think Eric has been very important for him in showing how to play and what to expect in his position as well, to bring his extra quality. But you can see with Ten Hag as well, there were several other players in that team as well that helped him out a little bit as well. So it made it easier for him to play at times, and that's the progress that he's in now. When important players at Ajax were leaving as well, then of course you need to do things yourself. Maybe better, or you need to make sure that other players around you are performing as well. And that's the thing for a young player to learn in Holland as well, because in Holland the teams, they've been built in a certain way. Then when you're doing well, players are leaving, other players are staying, and that's what happened with Timber now as well this season. Still showing, like we said before, still showing his quality. But because of other players not being very successful or not showing the ability that they need to do, doesn't make it easier for you, in this case for Timber as well, to show his ability up to the full extent. But we've still seen it, and that's why it's important for him to make that next step. And you can see with Ten Hag as well, when he joined United, he was still interested in bringing Timber in as well, because he knew as well what he can bring to the team in terms of possession. When you want to play a possession game, when you want to be very confident as a team and play and being very dominant, then you need to have players like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he was very close. He was heavily linked with a move to United last summer when Ten Hag arrived. How is the view? What's the view like in Holland about this deal now that he's on the verge of joining Arsenal? How is that sort of transfer being viewed by the football community in Holland?
Yeah, I think everybody is expecting him to move within 1 or 2 seasons. I'm not sure that everybody is happy that he's going to leave the club now, because people still think that he needs to learn. People still think that he needs to make progress. I'm thinking that he might need to stay for another season and then hopefully making that step to a big club. But I think that's how it goes everywhere within every league. People, fans, pundits. They all think that a young player needs to stay longer because then he can grow, he can develop, and then make that next step to the Premier League, which is okay to think. But there's always the issue that a player already played for several seasons at a certain level. There's a big club coming. That team that is showing interest, like Arsenal, are playing in a similar way that he's been playing in as well the last couple of seasons. And I think the player, and I spoke to him a while ago as well, I think the player is ready to make that next step as well. I think he's eager to perform on a different level, on a different stage.
Yeah, I saw some comments from Marco van Basten who was talking about that, and he was telling him that he felt he should probably stay for another year or two at Ajax just to continue his development and then make the big move. I mean, he's 22. He's been in the first team for a few seasons now. So obviously it is a big step moving to the Premier League. But do you think when you sort of look at him as a player and what you've seen, despite his young age, do you think he's got the capability of making that step up now?
Yeah. There's always the question: when's the right moment for a player to go? A lot of former players, they all say to a young player, and okay, maybe it's better for you to stay for another season. The thing is that when he's leaving Ajax now, when he's going to Arsenal, he's going to be surrounded by a lot better players. That makes it at times easier for him as well to make progress. So we all need to understand as well. The Arsenal team now is a young team. All these young players play at a certain level at a certain age as well. Timber, he's got the quality, he's got the attributes to make that next step, to perform better, to become a better player. But you also need to play with better players around you to make that next step. And that's why I think it's a logical step for him as well to make that step to Arsenal now as well. Because I don't think the player now is thinking for himself that he needs to be a starter, that he needs to play every game. Because I don't think that's the issue. He knows he's a young player. He knows that he wants to make that next step. He knows he wants to go to a team with good players that play in a certain way, certain philosophy to improve, and to occasionally maybe step in and to play his part and be important for the team. And I think this is I think it's a good step for him to do it now and to show his ability. And when the manager is asking him to step in, to show his quality.
Yeah, I mean, he's won 2 league titles with Ajax, 1 cup as well. He's going to become, like you mentioned there, about not necessarily coming in as a guaranteed starter. I mean, Ahead of him in defence, you've got Ben White, who's been very, very good at right back for Arsenal. Obviously, got William Saliba as the right-sided centre back, who's been exceptional for Arsenal, and looks like he is back fit in time for the new season. So, there's no guarantee he's going to come in and start straight away. But I think what Arsenal are trying to do at the moment is not necessarily improve the starting 11; it's improve the first 17, 18 members of that squad, so Mikel can rotate and bring players out and rest players when needed, and the level doesn't drop. I think that's what
Yeah.
probably caught Arsenal a little bit short last season, and what ultimately saw Manchester City win the title. The transfer fee is going to be about 40 million euros with another 5 million of add-ons, and my understanding is those add-ons are pretty achievable. So, all in Ajax are going to receive about 45 million euros for Timber. Do you think that is a good deal for them? Is that a transfer fee that the fans are quite happy with?
Well, the fans at Ajax, they're never happy when a player is leaving them. Who's been successful or can bring a lot to the team again this season. But that's how it goes in Holland. We all know Ajax, their academy, bringing up young players and making that next step to Europe, to big clubs. They've done it with Timber now as well. So I think they need to be very, very happy with the amount of money that they can get from Arsenal. It's a good deal. It's a player that has been there in the first team for a couple of seasons, showing his ability, and wants to leave probably as well. And I think as a club at Ajax, you need to consider that as well, and you need to work together to make a good deal so he can make progress, and the club can get some money into to invest that in again a good player so they can make another step as well. So it's I think it's good. I think everybody would be happy with that amount of money.
I mean, he's very good on the ball. His strengths, from my limited knowledge of him, is how good he is on the ball, how comfortable he is in possession, his passing ability, his ability to progress the ball forward with the ball. I'm just looking at some stats here. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're able to see it. If you're listening on podcast, I'll just explain it to you. I mean, last season, despite it being pretty well, but understood that his performances dipped a little bit, and Ajax's performances dipped a little bit. He had more successful passes than anyone else in the Eredivisie, more successful passes forward. His passing accuracy was 91%. He had 487 progressive carries. His progress was 5,038 meters. You look at, as a progressive carrier, the ball moving forward over 5 meters, he's way ahead of anyone else in the Eredivisie last season. So that, I mean, clearly his strengths as a player, Jaap, you're expecting him to come in and he'll be able to show that over here, how comfortable he is on the ball, and be able to, help Arsenal progress the ball forward and dominate possession.
No, but I think at times it's going to be even easier for him at times as well to play with at Arsenal with these players, because all these stats shows you as well that he needed to be very important, very decisive for Ajax last season. Because he was a player, and then in Holland he's a very young player as well, and you can see the ability, and we all know the ability that he has on the ball, and you can see his stats as well. That means last season as well that people are expecting, Ajax was expecting a lot from this player at this age to make a difference. And then there's the true question: can you expect from a 22-year-old player that from the back, playing out from the back, that he needs to give all these decisive passes in that team, to make a difference? Because he was the only one, or almost the only one, that in the team when they played, who took the initiative, who showed quality on the ball. The other players all found it very difficult, to show their ability in Holland, and that's why it's for him good to make that step, because the players around him now at Arsenal are much better, showing more quality, taking up better positions as well in small areas, so he can be more decisive in his passing as well. So I think it's it's very good for him to go over there and to show his ability. And again, at Ajax, we can all say and talk about his performances last season, but he was still one of the best players, and he showed when he's played with better players around him that he can be an exceptional player for them.
I mean, we look here, this is where he's played. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. If not, this is where the percentage of positions he's played for Ajax since coming into the team in 2020. 81% of his appearances for Ajax have been played as a sort of right-sided centre-back. Just 12% have been at right-back. But my understanding is that Timber is being signed to play as a right back for Arsenal in this system that Mikel Arteta is using at the moment. What are your thoughts on that, Jaap, in terms of him playing as a right back role? First of all, he's not going to play as a traditional English right back, bombing forward on the overlap. I think he's going to be used more of an inverted right back, very similar to the way Zinchenko on the left hand side, comes into midfield and sort of bolsters the numbers in midfield. How do you feel about him potentially playing in that sort of inverted right back role for Arsenal? Is that his best position?
He can play. He's even played for Ajax. He's even played on the midfield, like a holding midfielder role as well. He can play even at that position. Same like Martinez did at Ajax with Ten Hag as well. Who went to United. But on the right side, he can play very well. He's been playing there in Holland as well. And again, when you're a player with that pace, with that comfort on the ball, and having the intentions to go forward, clever in taking up his positioning as well, then it's good to bring him in, and at times let him play on the right side as well. So I'm not surprised that the intentions of bringing him in and maybe playing him on that side is going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's going to help Arsenal sort of try and get more of a stranglehold on games. Mikel Arteta's always spoken about that. He doesn't want to sort of see games out by, having an extra defender on, trying to, sit back and clear balls away. He wants to win games and see out games by just dominating possession and not giving the opposition a sniff. And I think the addition of someone like Timber could potentially sort of help with that going forward. In terms of his weaknesses at the moment for such a young player, I've seen you mention it before in interviews you've done, saying maybe he needs to be a little bit more aggressive to succeed in the Premier League. I've got a quote here from Schneider, Wesley Schneider, who says he's a smart lad, a really good defender, but he loses every header. And in England, against those wardrobes in the Premier League, that will be his downfall. I mean, is that really the case? Because I remember when Arsenal signed Ben White, all we used to hear about was, he can't win a header. When Manchester United signed Martinez, there was so much focus on his height, and everyone thought, he can never succeed in the Premier League because of his height as a centre-back, and he was absolutely brilliant for Manchester United last season. So is this something Arsenal fans should worry about when Timber's arriving? Is that a real sort of weakness in his game?
No, I don't think you need to worry about that. I think as a fan as well, and when you follow Arsenal as well, you need to have a look at the philosophy of playing and how they're playing and what their strengths are. And that's what other managers are doing. That's what happens at City. That's what happened at United as well, and bringing players in. Because if you bring in a player, and you mentioned it yourself as well, you're looking with your team and how you want to play to be very dominant. So it means when you're dominant and you play on the opposition's half every time, and you keep possession and you're waiting, you're being patient to eventually find an opening to score. It means that you don't need to defend a lot. Of course, we all know that it's going to happen. We all know that you're always, especially in the Premier League, you get into situations that you need to defend, but you calculate that as well as a manager, or as a club, in how you eventually want to play and what can happen. Timber, we all know he's not the biggest. Zinchenko on the left side is not the biggest players as well. But you need to be clever at times as well, in your duels, in your 1v1s, and how to approach them as well. There's other players last season came into the Premier League who are not the biggest as well, and they've been doing very well. So I don't think it's a worry. I think it can happen, that he can lose. But even in Holland, and what I said before as well, because the league in Holland, the difference of quality with the teams is so big, it makes it easier for players like Timber to do well. They don't always need to be very aggressive or or win every header, to be successful. Going into the Premier League, and that's a learning curve for him as well. Going into the Premier League, these are things that he needs to address, that he needs to be aware of, and probably the manager, the coaches over there are going to tell him as well, and what to expect and how to approach the game. He's going to notice that himself during games as well, that he might need to change certain bits as well to be even more successful, or not to be done in certain situations. And that's the thing for a young player when you're stepping into a big club like Arsenal, in a big league like the Premier League as well, to know, hey, okay, this is totally different. I need to step up over here, or I need to do better in certain situations. And he's a clever guy, so he knows that, and eventually he will step up to that as well. But the most important thing, for him going into the club, and for the club as well, and for the fans to know as well, is that he's very good on the ball. He can defend. He's got pace. His positioning is good as well. He's clever in his 1v1s as well. So he knows what to do. He knows how to win a challenge as well. So I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, let's quickly move on to a couple of questions that Arsenal fans have sent in to me, but I think you'll probably be a lot better placed to answer those than I will. There's some here. There's one from Phil, another one from Lilembumva, by the looks of it. It says, and they're both kind of focused on the same thing, asking the question, and you did touch on it a little bit earlier, about the possibility of Timber, moving into some sort of defensive midfield role if need be. So do you think he has the attributes, and he's shown that when he has played there for Ajax, that if, Mikel ever needed to turn to him to be in that sort of holding midfield role, that he could potentially play there?
Yeah, he can do that. He's done that before over here in Holland as well. He can play as a holding midfield player. Sometimes even with Ajax when they played, when he's one of the centre backs, and then he's stepping into the midfield to be the extra midfield player was in there as well to make a difference. Because like we spoke about, he's good at taking up his position, and he's calm, comfortable on the ball, so he can do that easily. And it's always easy for a manager to have a player like that in your squad as well, because then you can mix up the system without making subs from the bench. When he's playing, within the 11 who are on the pitch, you can make a change in your setup.
Mm-hmm. Now we've got one here. It's a kind of a bit at the bottom there that from John Z that I wanted to ask you about more. So insight into his character, what he's like off the pitch in the dressing room training. Now I know you haven't actually worked with him. You didn't cross paths when you were working as a coach at Young Ajax. I think he was there, but maybe a few age groups below you. Is that right? But you said you've spoken to him, so you kind of know him a little bit. What sort of character are Arsenal getting, and what do you think he'll be like in the dressing room?
No, he's a nice guy. He's calm. He's willing to learn. You can see when you speak to him that he's trying to pick up things. He's listening very well. He likes to, of course, like everybody, he likes to make a joke at times as well. But he's at most, and how I know him, and when I spoke to him as well, that he's very eager to make progress. I've heard from other people as well that he's following everything. He's listening to and seeing a lot of interviews, reading a lot of interviews about him as well. So he's taking every comment very serious about him as well, in order to become a better player, not changing his personality, but at least to learn a lot more in what he can do to be more successful. Mm-hmm. And that's how he is as a person. He's also very helpful to other players as well, and which I think is very good. The thing that I spoke about with him as well is a thing that as a young player, what you can do to improve yourself a lot more when you're out there, in terms of communicating, because that's with a lot of young players when they go into the game, is communication, talking to players around you, and making certain comments and telling other players what you need to do or what they need to do better, so your game becomes easier as well. And these are things that we spoke about a little bit as well, so it makes it easier eventually for him on the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's quite difficult for players of his age, 22, 21, to come over to a new country, especially to the Premier League where the demands are so high. But do you kind of look at him as a character and think that'll be the sort of thing that won't really faze him, that he'll look forward to that challenge rather than being, a little bit nervous about it or something like that?
No, he knows that. He probably knows that as well when you go over there. I think that's for everybody. When you come from abroad, you go over to the Premier League, to a big club like Arsenal, then yeah, it's going to be totally different. But he knows that he needs to get adjusted to everything. Like I said, he's a very down to earth guy. He's willing to learn, to make progress, and he's going to suck up every information, all the information that he's going to get from his coaches.
Mm-hmm. And then lastly here, so if you're going to sort of compare his style of play and attributes with any sort of player past and present, who would that be? I know this is probably putting you on the spot a little bit, but is there
Yeah.
anyone who he kind of reminds you of as a player?
Oh, that's a difficult one to be honest. Well, it's a tough one to mention. I think he's got certain bits like, and I'm not saying he's equal or he's on the same level as or is the same player as Daley Blind a little bit. You know him. He went to United, of course, but on the ball, I mean, he's been very comfortable on the ball, like he was as well. Very good in taking up his positioning as well. I think Timber is quicker, is faster, has got more pace than Blind has. But he's a bit similar, also in getting that ball, being comfortable, waiting, stall at times on the ball as well, to find that gap when that gap's opening, to find the right pass in between as well. I think he's got similar bits like Blind has as well. But he's got other bits like Martinez as well, a little bit, yeah, on the ball and carrying that ball forward, at times stepping into it to intercept that ball and anticipate to the situation. So there's not one play that you can say, okay, he's similar to that player. He's got certain bits of certain players, and that's what I like about him as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, yeah, I just wanted to quickly talk about Arsenal. The last time I bumped into you, and for those watching, myself and Jaap know each other from when Jaap was manager at Reading and I was a reporter at Reading at the time. Last time I bumped into you was last season at Old Trafford before the Arsenal lost 3-1 at the start of the season. Arsenal went into that game. They'd won every game that season. I thought they played very, very well at Old Trafford, actually. It was one of the games they lost, but I thought they played very well and were unlucky not to lose. But following that, from how the season progressed and the sort of job that Mikel Arteta did and how Arsenal performed last season, what's your take on Arsenal going into the new year? Have you been really impressed by the kind of job that Mikel Arteta has done in taking the club from where it was to where it is now?
Oh, you're very impressed. Very impressed with the club as well and how they handled the situation. Because when Arteta came and when he stepped in, in the beginning, people were still, there was a lot of criticism, towards him as well and how they played. But and at the club, I think the board they stuck with him. They gave him the opportunity to make progress, to make changes. They brought certain players in, quality players, and then you can see that everything's evolving. You can see the philosophy becomes better, or in terms of or well known by the players as well. Things become more easier. They become more dominating in their way of playing. We mentioned a little bit about the amount of players and what they're having, to bring with the likes of Timber, bringing other players in, so you can have more quality on the bench as well. It's easier for the manager to make changes. But they this season they were very impressive in how they played. The United game, they were the better team. They got done in transition, especially Rashford, in scoring as well, which is a thing, of course, with teams who are very dominant, and a little bit from my period at Reading as well. When you're dominating, in transition, sometimes you get done, which is frustrating. But these are things that you, as a manager, you need to be wary of. That's how you approach your team as well, to be focused on these situations as well. But it's for them, for Arsenal, it was a pity they couldn't keep it up until the end of the season. But very impressive in how they played, showing quality on the ball. Very good players, keeping these players fit for a long time. But it's also a difficult season for them in terms of going to the end of the season and keeping up their standards, because towards the end of the season you need to stay fit, you need to stay sharp. Other teams are going to be making it very, very hard, very difficult for you. You see that City could make changes, could keep the players fit until the end of the season, to eventually win the trophies. And that's the thing that Arsenal need to look at now, and that's what they probably are doing.
Yeah, I think obviously losing William Saliba was so crucial to Arsenal last season. It was so important to them, and those injuries did hit them at the exact wrong stage. I mean, obviously they're signing Timber. Declan Rice is about to come through the door. Kai Havertz has already signed. When you kind of look at the new season, obviously you, with your Manchester United links, must have been a little bit disappointed to see what Manchester City went on to achieve last season, winning the treble. But when you look at this season now and what's been done, do you think it's going to be another dominant season for City, or do you see the likes of Arsenal or someone else really being able to give them a proper challenge again this year?
Well, City's always been dominant. The last couple of seasons, they've been dominant and how to play football and difficult to beat. But that's what I like about the Premier League. You know, the other teams want to step up as well. They're investing. They're changing managers at times as well, which is not always good. But it's interesting to see now how other teams then are going to be playing. For Arsenal, hopefully they can do the same thing again, maybe even better. You know, to challenge City. That's what I hope for United, of course, as well. You know, to be more dominant and hopefully challenge City as well and how they can play. You know, but United, of course, you know they're struggling as well to get the right players in to make a change. Arsenal is doing well at the moment by bringing Havertz in as well. Very good player, Timber as well, like you're saying, and Rice. Important players from other teams coming into Arsenal to strengthen their squad. And that's how you need to approach the Premier League as a club. So it's going to be interesting as well. But it makes it always good to look at the Premier League and seeing that other teams are always willing to invest, you know, to making a chance of winning the title. And that's why it's always hard to say from, you know, before the season to say, okay, you know, this team is definitely going to win it again. And yeah, it's interesting.
Perfect. Well, look, yeah, thank you very much for joining me today and giving us all your insight. I know it would be really, really appreciated by everyone watching this or listening to it on the podcast. So thank you very much. And yeah, I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Thank you, Jaap Stam.
Thank you, Charles. See you.